Welcome to this edition of The Bridge. In today's edition, we will be looking at writing winning grant proposals. We will be using the current call for proposals launched by the UNDP to drill you through the whole process of writing winning grant proposals. On The Bridge, it's about transforming what we study in school and implementing it to solve real problems in our society. When we come back, we will actually take you through the whole process using a current call for proposal as our learning board. Welcome back. You may or you may not have read or noted that the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, has actually launched a small grant call for proposal focusing in the Northwest and the Southwest region. In this edition of the program, we are going to basically take you through the whole process to be able to get you start mounting a very, very successful program. Project. This is why this program is running on LDTV. It's all about moving from conception of ideas to actually transforming them into implementable projects, getting the resources that you need to be able to implement your project and impact on lives wherever you may be found. This program is geared towards empowering students who are doing social sciences or who are currently studying project management, as well as heads and the NGO teams who are actually struggling with identifying resources that are always in most of the times short-circuited by lack of the skills to be able to mount very, very good programs. We want to make first and foremost this disclaimer. This coaching session is not sponsored by UNDP or any other agency. The initiative is purely that of LDTV in line with its mission of development communication. Why are we coaching? The first thing we want you to know is that we've set a number of objectives. The first objective why we are coaching is to improve NGOs' access to resources. And of course, we are looking at the percentage of NGOs that will have adequate resources. Think about it, 80% of all NGOs that are active in the Northwest and Southwest and in other parts of Cameroon, if they have access to resources, we therefore move from that particular objective to begin to think about how to improve the quality of proposals that they submit. So we want to be able to put resources in the hands of NGOs through our coaching program. We want to see quality projects submitted. We want to see the quality of services to affected population. So this is all what we are targeting. High number of adequate resources in the hands of the civil society, improved quality of services, and of course, improved dignity to all those affected by different social problems. Now let's look at it concretely. When a call for proposal is launched, if we even go back, grant writing today is very, very simple. Let nobody tell you that it's so difficult. If you can tell a story, then you can write a successful grant proposal. The first thing is that most funders today will always produce two key documents, what they call the grant proposal guideline and the grant application form. These are the two key documents you must get hold of. My point, never start writing a proposal without fully going through the funding guidelines. The funding guidelines is everything about that project. So if you can't understand a single word in the funding guideline, it's better to contact the funder or the agency to get clarification before you go writing your proposal. Now, today we are going to use a current call for proposal launched by the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP, and it's going to run till the 21st of this month, which means you must submit your proposal before on or before the 21st. Now, let's look at the call for proposal. Now, the call for proposal has a reference. And then we have the guidelines. As I said, the first thing we need to do is to go through the guidelines carefully. If you look at the screen, it tells you the UNDP program called Confidence Building Early Response Mechanism in the Southwest and Northwest regions of Cameroon. That is to tell you that there is a bigger program that is being run by UNDP, and the name of their program is called Confidence Building Early Response Mechanism in the Northwest, Southwest, and Northwest regions. And now within the context of that program, they have what they call the Small Grant Facility. The Small Grant Facility, if you read through it, it tells you is to support local NGOs in their early recovery efforts and to promote social cohesion. There are two key phrases that I want you to note if you want to try your hand in this current proposal: confidence building and social cohesion. These are the core elements that the funder wants to fund: confidence building and social cohesion. The first thing you need to do is to make sure that you have a good understanding of what is social cohesion. You need to understand that social cohesion is born out of confidence within the community, confidence in people, because you can't live well with somebody if you don't have confidence in that person. And now you go further, the grants guideline tells you that this facility is being piloted through this call for proposal of grants up to $20,000 per project plus 10% administrative cost. Now, it is not enough to see $20,000 and 10% administrative cost. You need to read further. It says the target is to support 4 to 6 initiatives in the Northwest and Southwest. So 4 to 6 in the Southwest, 4 to 6 in the Northwest. So it means a minimum of 8 projects and a maximum of 12 projects. This is a lot, okay? And then below there you can see it tells you that the pilot project is 1st of June to the 31st of December, which means you can't run your project, you can't write your project proposal saying it's going to run for 7 months, it's going to run for 8 months. You can't run this program beyond the 31st of December 2019. So these are some of the key things you need to note in this call. The next, we will look at other aspects. It says this call for proposal is only open to registered national Cameroonian NGOs who are already established and having ongoing activities in the Northwest and Southwest region. So it is not for anybody who will say, oh, there's a call for proposal, let me rush to the Northwest, Southwest, set up, and then write. No, it's for NGOs that are already established in the Southwest or Northwest, and then they have ongoing activities. Of course, as I said, your submission is actually 21 days after the launch of this proposal, but as I said, the deadline is the 21st. Now, it tells you the proposals are Community Recovery Initiative in the Northwest and Southwest, aiming to restore infrastructure. These are other keywords you need to understand: restore infrastructure, restore livelihood, or other essential functions. Now, I want to look at these two key things: restore infrastructure and restore livelihood. But I also said before that the core aspect of this project is about confidence building and social cohesion. So how will restoring infrastructure contribute to social cohesion? How will restoring a livelihood contribute to social cohesion? So this is what so infrastructure and livelihood are the vehicles that drives the concept of social cohesion. But restoring infrastructure is not just the core, it's the means to the end, and the end is social cohesion. And of course, it says that we also see here promotion of social cohesion must be an integral part of a project objective. Projects with an integrated aim to contribute to a better environment, waste management and recycling and promotion of female participation in recovery will be prioritized. Once they say it will be prioritized, don't force something into the project proposal that is not real, okay? The first thing you need to understand is that you have to show the correlation between female participation, the correlation between waste management and recycling to your core project area, and of course, and how that will promote social cohesion. So these are the things you need not to just rush into. When you also think about infrastructure, what is infrastructure? What are you thinking about? You're thinking about school infrastructure, health infrastructure, different type of infrastructure. Now, in a context where we find ourselves, you need to also be realistic. There are some type of infrastructure that if you really want to engage in it, it may not actually be appetizing now, but there are others that are like prime areas of need. I don't want to mention any, but I simply ask you to be relevant, to take the reality of the field into consideration when you mount your project proposal. Up next, we are going to look at instructions on how to fill the project proposal. The first thing they say, fill the project summary, write all sections of this, and first and foremost is that your whole project proposal must not be more than 15 pages. Don't go beyond 15 pages. You can be less. And also, if you must make some additional attachments, the sum total of these additional attachments must not be more than 10 pages. So do not try to attach your NGO's constitution. Do not try to attach a report of activity that is 20 pages long. This will simply dismiss your proposal before evaluation goes further. So the first thing you also see is that your funding commitments, of course, they ask you to be able to present what they call endorsement. And what is endorsement? Endorsements are either coming from the community where you are going to implement your project, it's either coming from your former donors, it's coming from anybody, any respectable and verifiable institution can endorse your project by saying, we know this project, we know this organization, we trust them, and the rest. That's vetting for you. And of course, there are a number of tables that you will need to fill as well. Of course, we will go through those tables together with you. The next, we will tell you that, as I said, this call for proposal is launched by the UNDP. And so if you have additional questions after this session, feel free. On the screen, you find their contact. You can write to them. You can call to get more clarification. Up next, we want to give you more detailed information as to what is going to be on your package for your call for proposal. First, there will be the information about the small grant facilities and its eligibility criteria. Eligibility criteria, you need to be very careful here. One, a complete administrative file of the NGO. Remember that this complete administrative file and all what is listed below constitute part of the 15 pages rather, of the proposal. Proof of location, including name and full address with phone number and email. Proof of location, which means you have to be able to say, I am based in Boya, on the top floor of this building, and my post box is this, and my telephone number is this. Preferably, we strongly recommend that you use first your fixed phone number, because your fixed phone definitely will tell the funder that you are fixed, that you are located somewhere. Then your mobile phone number and your email. Now, constantly we advise that if you run an organization, no matter how small, do not use public email addresses. xx@yahoo.com, xx@gmail.com. You are not a partner to Yahoo or to Gmail. Create a website, use your professional email, e.g., info@lukmefcameroon.org. I'm not saying you should use email at info@lukmef.com to send your project, but these are professional emails because the funder now can also search and read more about you because you can't say everything. The next is the legal status and copy of the registration receipt. This is just a photocopy of your NGO registration. Activity report for the last 2 years. The question now is, I must not exceed 10 pages in my additional document. Now my activity report for the last 2 years needs to be added. You can summarize that. Real activity reports are not Bibles. You need to be able to summarize your activity report to be able to beat 2, 3, 4 pages is enough. Now, they also ask you for the last 3 years income statement and the 2019 forecast budget. Here is where it's going to get all of us on the neck because quite often a lot of NGOs do not audit their accounts either externally or even internally. So when they talk about income statement, it doesn't necessarily mean audited. You can have your internal income statement, but the best is if you can present an income statement that is certified by an external certified accountant. That adds credibility to your organization. The last in your administrative file is what they call the bank statement of account with RIP. Now, this is different from getting your organization account in a microfinance institution. This is not what they want. You have to have a bank account in a commercial bank, in some of the main banks. So, because money needs to be transferred into your bank account if your project is funded. But this is not possible if you have your account in a credit union or in an MFI that is not having a REIT. The second part of your grant proposal package will be a detailed technical file of the project. And of course, this is the core of your project, the project document. Specifying the proposed intervention zone or zones. You can do this in Bamenda, you can do it in the Northwest or Southwest. But when they say zone or zones, it also means in the Southwest, for example, you may choose to work in Fako and in Meme. You have to specify where your activities are going to take place. So it's going to take place in the Southwest, it's going to take place in Fako and in Meme. So I need to specify and may even go in more details because we are in a crisis and there is the humanitarian response and the humanitarian needs. If this is going to take place even in a certain village, be specific. Say exactly where this project is going to take place. And this detailed technical file constitutes all the different steps that you are going to see below. The third part of your document is a detailed financial file, or the budget. We are also going to look at the budget. Now, you need to be very careful. Projects including administrative burden, such as salaries, will not be considered. This is also because the funder stated up that you must be established and having active activities in the region. If you are having active activities, it means you have an office, it means you have staff, it means you are paying staff and the rest. Because $20,000, which even includes co-funding, is quite a small amount of money that you can't begin to factor in salaries, rents, and all of this. So these parts of the administrative costs must be taken over by the by the organization. Of course, we are not saying you shouldn't include salaries in your project budget. You should include salaries in your project budget, but you must state that that part of the salary will be borne by your organization. That is your own co-funding to the project. Up next, we also say if you want to get selected, the selection criteria must be that you must be an NGO or an association specializing in one or more of the areas that I will explain later. You must have good knowledge and experience, minimum 3 years. So if your organization is less than 3 years old, you are already ineligible. Of course, if your project is going to, if you are not, even if you are more than 3 years old, but you are not experienced in the two regions, your project will not be accepted. Of course, below you also see that you should be specialized in one of the above domains with evidence of similar experience, minimum 5 years. Minimum 5 years, which means your organization must be 5 years old. And if your organization is 5 years old, they should have a minimum of 3 years experience in the Northwest and Southwest, which means I may have registered my organization in Douala, in Yaoundé, or elsewhere, but for the last 3 years, I've been working in the Northwest and Southwest. So that will give me the 3 years experience of the region. You also need to be able to prove that you work with vulnerable populations. You need to also know who are these vulnerable populations that you are expected to work with. We will now take you through the whole process, but as I said, if you have any queries or information, you contact the person here on our screen. We are not going to answer any questions directly related to the current call. We can give you guidelines, technical guidelines from a professional point of view on how to draft this proposal, but we are not going to change anything in the project document as published by the funder.
This is Legacy Development TV. Peace, justice, and development. Legacy Development TV. Peace, justice, and development.
We will now take you through the project document itself. First, the project areas of intervention is divided into two. You have the primary and the secondary. You can take one aspect in the primary, one or more aspects in the secondary. And in the primary, we are talking about infrastructure recovery. Your project can either focus on infrastructure recovery, can either focus on livelihood recovery, can either focus on waste management, cleanups and recycling. It can either focus on female participation. It can either focus on social cohesion. The question you need to ask yourself is, if I'm talking about infrastructure, as I said before, I can't just say infrastructure. This is not a purely infrastructure program. This is a confidence building and social cohesion program. Therefore, when you want to do anything on infrastructure, you must ask the question, how is this infrastructure going to boost confidence building within that community and build social cohesion? I'll take a simple example. If I choose to renovate a hospital or a health center, because this health center is used by everybody in the community, they find value, they meet there, they will actively even take part in doing the renovation because everybody needs help. So people go there, they meet each other, they sit together, they wait for their turn, and you see, this is what we call social cohesion. If somebody wants to do something to this health facility, you realize that people will now begin to say, okay, we come here for health services, we think we should have this. If you are talking about livelihood, you think about it. If I go around the communities, take individuals and empower them through some sort of skill building, small startup capital, it's not going to contribute to social cohesion. So when you think about livelihood, social cohesion in livelihood will more or less be looking at groups of persons within communities that are working together or that are ready to work together, even if through the group, individuals will be empowered to engage in some livelihood activities, but they hold, they all belong to their group. Their group is the core group that they find solace in. So they will always come back to the group, and consequently, because they will always come back to the group because it is the group that is supporting them to do these livelihood activities, they are together. They are each other's keeper. and that is social cohesion. They begin to live together. They begin to basically do things together within their communities as a community and think collectively. Of course, if you are thinking about waste management, it must be the same. If you think about, because if you look at waste management, that can even be human waste, okay? If I go to a community and there are no toilets, and I choose to do a community toilet that is going to serve everybody, everybody begin to see that toilet as a common community social facility, and so everybody will go there. Of course, you may meet somebody on your way to the toilet. You may basically sit somewhere in the community meeting thinking about how to take good care of the toilet, and that is what generates social cohesion. Of course, you can also take one or more areas in the secondary topics. This can be direct action, capacity building, intercommunity dialogue, communication, advocacy, or sensitization. Now, for each of these, you must set separate indicators. If I'm doing infrastructure, I must set my indicators, I must set my objectives for infrastructure with its own indicators and how it contributes to social cohesion, as explained. If I'm also taking capacity building in the second option, I will also need to set its own indicators, because you cannot just say, I'm doing infrastructure, but then I will train people on how to manage the infrastructure. Yes, you are going to do infrastructure and train persons. How many persons are you going to train? And is this training going to include a module on confidence building and social cohesion, or is purely a sustainability type of training for them to be able to manage the facility properly? If your training is purely to manage the facility, then it's also void of confidence building and social cohesion. So you need to be able to show how they are linked. Now, if you talk about intercommunity dialogue, inter means between communities, which means I can engage here. If I take intercommunity dialogue as my second option, which is going to accompany my first option, of course, then my project must take place in two different communities. And while the project is going on, I have people from the different communities either coming together to do the project in this community, and in that community, if I'm doing a water catchment, for example, and the water catchment is going to serve multiple communities, of course, they are going to come together to take part in that water catchment development. Then they begin to promote some sort of dialogue to be able to think about how they can live together as communities and to be able to produce that. Of course, if I want to take communication, advocacy, and sensitization as my second option, then it means while I'm doing livelihood recovery, I will also be doing either poster pasting, community engagement, advocacy, sensitization, to be able to get people understand the value of coexistence, the value of building confidence, social cohesion, and all of this. So my communication can be either direct communication, it can either be community mobilization, it can be training of community facilitators, it can be using a TV channel like LDTV, it can be using social media, it can be anything. But the question you must always ask at all times is it going to promote social cohesion? If your answer is yes, then you have to integrate that as part of your project. If the answer is no, then you have to think about a different strategy. When we come back, we'll look at other parts of the project in greater details. Welcome back to the program. Now we will look at other aspects of the project proposal to be able to keep going. Now we look at the budget. You can write a very beautiful project, and if the budget is wrong, the project is wrong, okay? So the first thing is the budget of a project is actually a translation of the project in numerical terms, in figures. So, which means, therefore, that your budget is an image, is a mirror of the narrative. So if you have activities programmed in your project, and then those activities are not budgeted, then the project is weak. If you have some activities budgeted, but they are not in the narrative, then the project is weak. So it means your narrative must be a mirror image of the budget. Every activity in the narrative must appear in the budget and figures attached to it. But in the current call for proposal, there are a number of forms that you have to fill. There is this form. The first form that you find there, which is the budget, is actually the budget summary. So here, you are expected to show how much money you are requesting from the confidence building small grant application or from UNDP's program. This amount can be in cash or in kind, okay? So you need to be able to say, I'm requesting for X amount in cash, X amount in cash, and this, what I'm asking for, makes up X percentage of the total project budget. You also look at the community's contribution. Is the community contributing anything in cash or kind? Now, again, you get back to the sustainability aspect as I discussed before. Because now, if the community is contributing something, then they are engaged, okay? They must not contribute money. If they can contribute money, fine. But if they can't contribute money, they may contribute labor. They may contribute material. They may contribute different type of things. If they are contributing labor, for example, you have to actually put a value to that labor, okay? Because if you were supposed to pay by Monday, and now they send 10 persons to help you in the innovation work, then you have to also calculate that if you were to pay 5,000 per day or 3,000 per day, and there are 10 persons working in the project commissioned by the community, then that is 30,000 contribution per day, but it's in kind. And that constitutes a certain percentage of the project which you need to put here as well. Now, what about your own organization? You can't get from UNDP, you can't get from the community, and then you do nothing. You have to also contribute. You can contribute either cash or kind, and that constitutes a certain percentage of your project. Of course, then you have the total contribution in cash, the total contribution in kind, and then the total percentage. Of course, the total percentage must be 100%. It can't be more, okay? So then you have the grand total of the project, which means what you are asking from UNDP, what the community is contributing, what your organization is contributing, and what other donors are contributing, okay? Because which means you can actually ask part of this, of your project money from another organization, but you bring it in here. There is an area here that you need to read this carefully and compare it with the first statement of that talked about $20,000. If you look the last but one column, it tells you that the program's contribution cannot be more than $15,000 plus 10% administrative costs, which means therefore that this project will contribute 75%, okay? Which means the funder, UNDP program, is going to contribute a maximum of 75% to the project. And then, so 25% will need to come from other sources. Out of the 20, so the total budget for your activity is supposed to be less than or equals to $20,000. And this $20,000 includes your own contribution, the contribution of the community, and all of this. Because if your project is $21,000, by my full understanding of the funding guideline, the project will not be funded. Reason? Because every funder wants to have a level of ownership of the project. And every funder, on the basis of the percentage contribution to the project, it can show you that they actually are the owners of that action, in terms of they can actually report it as part of their results. So therefore, you must limit your co-funding, community contribution, and everything to $5,000 in total. So then you will have UNDP will do $15,000 plus 10% administrative cost, which is, of course, administrative cost is 10% of the $15,000. So you are talking about a maximum of 16,000 plus US dollars as an amount that you can ask for totally from UNDP. The rest of it should be either community contribution, your own contribution, or from other funders. Now we take the next table, the budget 3. Now, if you said you are going to contribute, okay, you realize that you were actually just giving a certain amount. Your organization, you said you were going to give $2,000. But at this level, you have to detail that contribution. So if I look at the community, I should actually be able to say, this is what they are going to do, this is what they are going to do, this is what they are going to do, and it will sum up to the same amount that was stated as the community's contribution. If the amount here is different, if the total under the community contribution here is different from the amount that you stated in the previous table, then there is lack of consistency in your project budget. The same thing, if you said your organization was going to contribute $2,000, but now when you detail how this $2,000 is going to be invested in the project, and now we are seeing $2,100 or $1,999, it is not consistent with what you stated in the previous table. So this table, its totals must reflect the amounts that you stated in the previous table. This is very, very important for you to note, okay? So pay a lot of attention to all the tables. There is what we call consistency, okay? Consistency in grant writing starts from the narrative all through the budget. You can't say something and at one level, I can't really situate myself, whether you are still talking about the same project or you are now writing a different project. I must always, at all time, keep in my mind as an evaluator that you are talking about the same project and that you really know what you are talking about. The next table is actually what we call the expected results and corresponding indicators. An indicator tells the project what they are aiming to achieve. It gives you what you are looking for. If I want to train a number of persons, if I want to train 20 women, for example, my indicator will be the number of women trained, okay? Then if I actually train them, I begin to pick the figures. So if I say the number of women trained, in my data, if I say 20, it means if my funder picks up a call and asks me, please, can you give me the level of realization of your indicator for capacity building? I should understand that he or she is actually asking me to tell him or her the number of persons that I've trained so far. So the indicator is what people will use to be able to attach numbers. I can say an indicator is the percentage of persons that have knowledge in a particular thing. And of course, I must understand that when I set my indicator, there must be a means of verification. If I say 20%, it means I definitely will need to do a survey. Because if you say 20%, how do I know that 20% of persons in my community now understand the importance of social cohesion? I'm going to sensitize persons, yes. Sensitization is just telling people this is, but how do I measure the outcome of my sensitization? Okay, even if I sensitize 1,000 persons, that is an output. I've sensitized 1,000 persons. But what is the outcome? If I go around talking to 1,000 persons and nobody's attitude change, nothing happens, nobody's applying what I'm saying, then my outcome is zero. And if my outcome is zero, then I won't see any impact. And if there is no impact, then I go up and I see just an output, but in reality, it's wasted resources because no change has happened. So on this table, you have your objectives and the results. If my objective is to promote social cohesion, my result will be that people in community X are now living together, doing stuff together, okay? And my indicator will be the number of persons that are living together, the number of people that are living, exchanging, interacting together, doing things, who value some community services as common good or as social services and are actually engaging in that. So I need to be able to set those indicators. So if I take my objective 1, I need to be able to set my result. Do not do activities before results, because when you know the result that you want to get, then you now begin to think about which activities, what should I do to be able to achieve that result. That's when you begin to list your activities. You cannot list your activities and then you start thinking about the result. The results are directly tied to the objective, okay? So if I set an objective, I should know what the results I want to get if the objective is attained. Now, if I know what results I want to get based on my set objective, then I begin to ask myself, to be able to get this result, not to be able to get the objective. Because if you say to be able to get the objective, you get the activities wrong. So because the results are after the objective. So if I set my objective, I determine my result. If I determine my results, I begin to think, what activities should I implement to be able to achieve those, that set results? And then the indicators are, what will make me to know that I've achieved my result? Those are the indicators. Then I begin to list the things that you can check that will prove to you that my results were met. Okay? So that is what the indicators are. So if you have objective 1, objective 2, objective 3, you also have result 1, result 2, result 3. But note, it is not necessary that you have 6 objectives, 7 objectives. Once a project is having too many objectives, it's getting really, it will cease to be very enticing, and at times it's a program. You are basically setting up a very ambitious type of a program, and this is something that is going to last for 6 months. So you cannot set too many objectives. 2, 3 objectives should be okay, okay? But remember that you have area of focus primary, and you also have secondary area of focus. So it means for the primary area of focus that you select, you must set its objectives, its results, and its activities. Of course, its indicators. If you take the area of focus, secondary area of focus, you also need to set its objectives, its results, its activities, and the indicators. So this table is a result base. The first thing I will ask you to do for area of focus, primary area of focus, pick your objective, then set the results, think about the activities, and then think about the indicators, okay? It goes in that sequence. So objective, result, activities, indicators. So those are the things that you set from your objective 1, 2, 3, going forward. Now, the next table, we look at what we call the chronogram, or the calendar of activities. Here, it's also advised, don't jumble your activities. Coherence is very, very important when you write a grant proposal. When I start reading your grant proposal from the start, right through the budget, the sequencing, my subconscious mind should stay in that same sequence. So it means you shouldn't get to your chronogram and you start now with objective 2 instead of starting with objective 1 as you stated in your log frame. Okay, the table we completed above is a simplified form of a log frame. Of course, the donor said if you are too skilled, you can use a different log frame to add more. But my advice will be, if you are not very skilled, do not attempt using the more detailed log frame. It's actually meant for persons that are really like up to the task when it comes to grant writing. Stay with the simplified table that we just saw. But here, make sure that you list your activities. You list your objective and the activities, and then you state when those activities are going to take place. Note, some activities depend on others. There are some activities you must do them before you do the other one. So in looking at this calendar, evaluators are also trying to determine whether you are conscious of the fact that some of your activities are dependent on others. And if an activity is dependent on another, and then you try to show us that or to show the funder that the activity that is depending on another will happen before the activity that it depends on, then your logic is wrong, okay? Your logic is wrong and your project will not be funded. So, because it's not just about, they don't fund projects out of sympathy. They fund projects because they want to be able to achieve what the funders set out to achieve. So you need to be very consistent. The tables below needs to be maximum 6 months, June to December, okay? 1st June to December, it means therefore that you have to say if this activity is taking place in June, you put a cross on that June. If the activity is an ongoing, for example, if it is sensitization that is going to go through from the start of your program to the end, then you have to cross right to the end of the program, okay? If it is going to take place after every 1 month, then it means you also indicate. Because at any one time, the funder, looking at your chronogram, can tell you, at this level, send to me the results. Because he understands that by this time, you must have done this, and that. Of course, it is also true that when we give a calendar, this is just a tentative calendar. It can be modified during implementation or during the contractualization, because when the project is funded, there is a phase where you have to meet with the funder to further discuss the project before the money is actually given to you. So around that time, things may change. You may reprogram your project. So this is very, very important for you to note, your chronogram. It guides you realize your project. Now, you have this other, which is the presentation of the budget for activities. This is a very detailed form. My first advice, if you have no knowledge in Excel, then you are in for real trouble, because you can't write a project budget using a calculator or using your phone, okay? Even though this project in the call for proposal, this table in the call for proposal is in the Word document, but it's possible for you to copy this and transfer it to Excel and use it to do your project detail. Now, another thing you should see is that if you look at the table B3, it tells you the project activity, the project objective, the project activity, and then budget lines. Now, if you said you were going to do a training, in the previous tables, it was summary. It was a bulk amount. It was just a lump sum. But in this table, you have to break it down further. If I'm going to do a training, I can't just say the budget line is called training and I'm going to use 500,000. You must include some sales, and then you say, I'm going to hire the venue. I'm going to pay transport. I'm going to do meals. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And this number of meals. If I'm going to train 20 persons, then I will have the number of persons to be trained for meals. I'll put meals, and I'll put the unit cost, and I'll have the total. If I'm going to pay transport, I need to specify. If I need to hire a projector, I need to specify. So for every activity, the budget is very, very detailed, okay? So here is a table I advise again. Transfer it to Excel. Use formulas at all times. When you are done, you can highlight the whole Excel, copy, and transfer it back to Word. That way, you are very, very sure that you are not making errors. Because When you are doing budgeting, at one level, you may suddenly realize that, oh, what I'm asking from the donor is more than $15,000 plus 10%. So I need to go review my budget. I need to go either remove activities or reduce the number of persons that I'm going to train. And if you reduce the number of persons you are going to train from this particular detailed budget, make sure you go to your project narrative and also reduce that indicator. Otherwise, the question will come during evaluation, why in your narrative you said you are going to train 20 persons, but in your budget you say you are going to train 16 persons. Either you are now being maybe looked upon as a trickster, or like somebody who simply doesn't know what you are doing and the project will not be funded. So your budget is key. Let it be elaborated in Excel. We are about ending this edition, and I still want to give you this disclaimer. This coaching session is not sponsored by UNDP or any other agency. The initiative is purely that of LDTV in line with its mission of development communication. If you are watching this before the deadline for submission, please give us a call or simply walk to LUKMEF office situated on the top floor of Salvation Pharmacy building, and then we have a session. Our goal is simple: serving those in need. Our role, we do everything to mentor, to share our knowledge, because LUKMEF alone can't do it. If you enjoy it, stay tuned to other programs on LDTV, but more especially, look out for our next edition on The Bridge.